Alright, so now we have our rig fish. So we have our locator here. We have all these controls. If we hit play, we get this nice motion on all of these items. Perfect. Alright, so two things we want to animate on the fish. Number one, we want to have a big school of fish swimming around. Okay. Number two, we want to have some specific fish that we have them move in a certain direction. The big school of fish is just going to be a big school of fish moving randomly, but we're not going to have specific control over each individual fish. So we want to have control over some individual fish as well. So I'm going to save my scene as, I'm going to call this one rig 01. Yes, good. Okay, so I have one that's just rig and rig 01. The rig is just like this, just as I brought it in and opened it right now. So what I need to do is I'm going to create some end particles. So I'm going to make an emitter. So down here under end particles, create emitter option box. I'm going to set this to be a volume emitter. I'm going to call this one FishAnim. And I'm going to hit create. And what that does is it makes a big box. There it is, making it bigger. And the size of this box will dictate how big the area of fish is going to be. Okay, so if it's super tiny, it's not going to work. I need it to be pretty big. All right, now I'm putting it back here because I just want to get away from that. Now with this, I want to point my fish in one direction. Right now, if I was to hit play, you'll see that the fish come out and then they fall straight down. Okay, so two things are happening. One, this is emitting out in a bunch of directions, and two, my nucleus right here is pulling my fish downward because it has gravity. So let's change a couple things. On my emitter, which is my FishAnim 2, scrolling down here, I'm going to change my away from axis and away from center to 0, and along axis I'll do, let's say, 5. Okay, now when I did that, you'll see that it points up. No big deal, because all I could have to do is rotate it and scale it this way, and scale it that way, and rewind it, and hit play, and you're probably getting annoyed. Alright, so now it's definitely looks pretty much the same, but once we turn that gravity off, we'll be cool as a cucumber. So let's hit play again so we can see the particles. I'm going to grab the particles. And then somewhere inside this big mystery box under dynamic properties is ignore solver gravity. Boom, done. So now I turn that off, I rewind it again, I hit play, and you can definitely see that it's not falling, but they are moving super duper slow. Okay, but they're moving the same direction as that arrow. Cool. So now I can take that arrow, take this emitter, scroll down to where I did the away from, or along axis, and set it to 5. I can set this to like 20, and 20 is bigger than 5, so that means that when I hit play, it's going to move faster. So I just try to find a good number, maybe a hundy or a Benjamin, whatever you want to call it. There you go. Now keep in mind that these are supposed to be fish, right? That are moving. That's what each dot is going to emulate. So I want to find a good number. Now another thing that's kind of happening here is that they're getting to a certain point and kind of stopping. So again, I grab the particles because that's changing how they're moving afterwards, and I'm going to turn off their drag. Okay, so right now they have a little bit of drag on there, kind of holding them back. Well, now that's gone. So now we hit play, and let's see if they stop. Nothing's holding them back now. Look at them go. Cool. So obviously that's a lot of fish, especially for the next couple steps we're going to be doing. I'm going to grab my emitter. Okay, the emitter controls how the fish are being emitted. Makes sense. So I only want 10 for the rate. That means I get 10 particles per second shooting out. So now, obviously a lot less, but it's going to be manageable. So, very cool. Exciting. Yeah, that's good enough for now. So, what I want to do is if I take this fish here, here he is, and I grab these particles here, there we go, and I go to my end particles and I go to instancer. Where are you? There we go. That's why we pay for updates, so we can get new menus. Alright, so I just went to instancer and you'll see there's my fish. Okay, the beautiful world of my fish. Now, if we look close, you'll see this one has his tail going that way. They all pretty much have their tail going in the same direction. I want to follow one and see. Yep, and their tail is moving, so now his tail is going the other direction. So what's happening here is this instanced dude, way back here at the origin, his animation is actually trickling into all of these other ones. So what happens is we get all of these fish that are moving with this one, okay? So they're actually like following this animation, which is pretty cool. Now the sucky thing about it is that they're all doing it in sync. So as this fish moves to the right, they're moving to the right. As that fish moves to the left, they're moving to the left. So I don't want that to be like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete the instancer. There he goes. Now we're left with dots again. And I'm just going to save this scene as, not a saving. Let's call this fish school 01. Make sure you spell school correctly. That's why you went there. Now we're going to go to open scene. I'm going to open up my fish rig, which is, again, just my naked little fish. And what I want to do is I want to create a little looping thing that I can use for this. Okay? So if we look at this, you can see there's kind of a pattern. So if I went to, like, let's say 1, you can see where this tail is here. And somewhere along this line, right about 48-ish, it's about the same. So if I were to rewind this again, you'll see there's only a slight move, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my fish friend, and I'm going to duplicate my fish friend. So I just hit Control-D. Okay, this calls it fish number 1. I'm going to then take a new layer, and I'm just going to assign him to the new layer and then turn him off. Okay, so that's fish number 1. Then I'm going to play it for a couple frames. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That looks good. I'm going to grab my fish friend again. I'm going to duplicate him. I'm going to right click on my layer and add him into that list. Okay, and that's fish number 2. I'm going to do that again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 just seems like a good number. Okay, duplicate him again. Add it to the selection. Click off. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Duplicate him again. Add it to the selection. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Duplicate it again. Add it to the selection. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oops. It's duplicated. Now add it to the selection. Okay. So now, inside of my FishAnim thing, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 fish. I'm just going to Shift P to pull them out of that group. And now they're all by themselves right here. If you have another method of doing that, feel free to exercise your First Amendment rights. There we go. So I just threw that fish on a different layer just so I don't have to look at him because he's kind of ugly. And then I'm going to turn on my other layer. Okay. Now this layer here, layer 1, the first one we created, represents essentially different instances or different poses of this fish. Okay, let's go to 4, we'll just scoot 4 that way, and then 5, we'll scoot 5 that way, and then 6, and we'll scoot 6 that way. So if we look at this, you can see how here's where we started. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there's basically 6 keyframes. Now I could have gone through and made a lot more of these, but I don't need to make a lot more of those. That's going to be sufficient for what we need to do. So I'm going to take all these guys. I'm going to reset their translate X. I'm going to freeze their transforms. There we go. So we're frozen back there. I'm going to delete their history. Okay. And then I'm just going to export these fish out. So export selection. Plain old fish. Perfect. Wonderful. And I'll save this scene too, just so I have it. The only thing that I've changed in this scene is I've duplicated these guys and added some layers, so that's no big deal. So back to, yes, I said save. And this is a weird habit of me, is I always make a new scene and then I open. You don't have to do that. Back to my fish school. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to import my fish. Fish model? No. Fish rig. That one. Oh, I exported it as a plain old fish. Dang it. It's a good thing we saved it. Let's go back to fish rig. There we go. What? Fish rig, I said. Okay, let's try this again. File, export, selection. Not as an OBJ, as my binary. Plain old fish. Try this again. Same witty jokes I had before. Just remember all that stuff. Back to fish school. Cool. Haha. And we import, and we go to plain old fish, Maya binary, bellissima. Now we grab these 6 fish. Here we go. And this is essentially going to create a little loopy pattern. So what we should see is that it looks like the fish are moving, and then we can offset this. I don't like how these came in as plain old fish, colon fish 1, plain old fish, colon fish 2. Under Window, General Editors, Namespace Editor. So anytime you import something, it creates this namespace. And there's actually an option when you import to not do that, but I always forget every time. So all I have to do is click this and say delete, and then just say merge with root. And there we go. So now, fish 1 through 6. Perfect. Much cleaner. All right, so I have fish 1 through 6. I hit play for a little bit. There are some particles. And grab the particles. I'm going to go to my end particle. I'm going to go to my instancer, which I should have found this a lot faster, which I did. And I go to the option box. Okay. Now here's the option box for this. These top 6 here are my fish, and they're in order 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This one is my particle. I can remove that. I always like to select the particle because it makes it easier if we have multiple particles to pick the one we want. Okay, so if we have multiple particles, we can pick whichever particle we wanted. So here's my end particle shape. Here are my fish. So I want to cycle these sequentially. Okay, so what that means is that it's going to start on fish 1 and go to fish 6, and then when it gets to fish 6, it'll jump back to fish 1, then go to 6, and then 1, and then 6. It loops over and over again. Okay, cycles per step. So we'll just leave it at frames for now. All this stuff we can change after. Perfect. Create it. Hit play. There's our fish. Now you see they're not moving. I didn't rewind it. I just started playing in the middle of my timeline, and it doesn't like that. So it wants to be rewound. And then we hit play. And then we can see that the fish are definitely wagging their tails now. And we only have 6 frames that we're using. But it doesn't look bad. I mean, it looks like we have fish wagging their tails, especially when we look here. Now, it does look like it's going a bit quick, you know, so maybe we don't want to go that quick. So now let's go into the instancer, and we can kind of customize some of this stuff. Now, when I said go in the instancer, I was lying. Cycle, use step, unit, frames, cycle, step. I wonder if we can do that. Just for fun, let me see if I can do that and see if that does anything at all. The cool thing about Maya is you just try stuff. I was going to swear and say try, you know, that word. That's going way too fast. Set it to 5. But you just try stuff, and you just see if it works. And if it works, then it might save you some time. Look at that. The exact thing we were going to do. I've never typed in a number here before, but I thought this very second, let's try that number. And what it's doing now is it's actually like doubling some of the frames. Okay. So it's going 5 times for each frame. And then we're getting that motion. And so it looks like the fish are wagging their tails, but it doesn't look horrible. It looks a little bit horrible. Let's maybe make this 3. There we go. That looks pretty good. It looks like they're wagging their tail and doing their other stuff that they need to do. Okay? Now, perfect. That saved us a whole lot of headache. Cool. But because this is a class and we want to learn lots of stuff, I'm going to grab my particles. I'm going to scroll down to where we have add dynamic attributes per particle array. And just so you can see this, is that we could actually click, if I click this general tab, I can make a new attribute here, and I can call this whatever. Okay, I wouldn't actually call it whatever because that would be horrible. I would call this speed of change. Speed of change. Whatever. And I make this a per particle array, and what that means is that each particle gets their own number. So a per particle array speed of change means that each particle will get a number. Okay. So I can give this a value. So if I can right click and say create expression, I'm going to copy it and paste it and say equals a random number between 0 and 6. Okay, so this is basically saying that this is going to be a random number between 0 and 6, and it's going to assign it to my new variable. So just like we talked about before, name dot, oh, look I did. So this is the name of it, the dot, and then the attribute equals a random number between 0 and 6. Now this is going to give me a random number between 0 and 6. So it could be like 2.2 or 3.3. So I want this to be an integer, so I'm going to say int, like that, and hit create. Haha. Haha means I did it correctly without making a mistake. So that's what that means. So int equals a random number, or int random number between 0 and 6. So now what this guy does is instead of getting a decimal point number, which is what we could get, it'll round it off. Okay, so if it's 2.2, it'll just be 2. If it's 3.3, it'll just go to 3. If it's 5.7, it'll go to 5. Okay, so now if we rewind it and play, we get the exact same animation. Okay, just because I created an attribute for particles doesn't mean diddly squat. However, if I now go into my particles and I find my instancer tab, there's a little tab inside here called instancer, and it's always hiding. That's how you know it's a bad boy. There it is. So here's instancer. Now what I can do with this is, see this one that says object index? It's blocked out right now because we have stuff set in the instancer to automatically sequentially move this stuff. So if I turn off all this stuff like that, and then I grab my stuff again, you'll see that object index now becomes open, and I can assign it to speed of change. Okay, so if I rewind this again and I hit play, you'll see that the animation is dead. Okay, there's no animation in this. But what this is doing is it assigns a random pose to each one of these guys. Okay, it doesn't make much sense for what we're doing here, but what this does do is it allows us to, let's say we had rocks and we just wanted some random rocks or meteors or whatever, we could use this object index to pick a variation of rocks. So if I had 38 rocks, I could say a random number between 0 and 38, pick that, object index, and then you'd have 38 random rocks distributed throughout your scene. Okay. Again, for this it doesn't really matter, but that's what it is. Now, there it is. Here's my expression. So I first made a creation expression which picks, right when this particle is born, it makes a random number and assigns it to this one. So then what I can do is do a runtime expression. And I could basically just take the speed of change and make that bigger so you can see it. That doesn't help. There we go. Change plus 1. Okay. So what this is going to do is it's going to take the speed of change and it's going to add 1 to it. Okay. So every frame it's going to add 1. All right, and then I could say create, close, rewind, play. So now what we're going to see is it's definitely working. So what happens is it starts at whatever number it got when it first came out, and then it adds 1 every frame. Well, in this case, it doesn't really do us any good because we're at frame 51. So this one that just came out at, at frame 1, he has no animation on him because it just it's zeroed out. We only have 6 frames. If we had 50 frames, yeah, this would work better. We'd be able to see something. But in this case, we're not. So here's one that just came out. And if we watch it, you can see his tail moved, his tail moved, his tail moved. And now it's just locked into that. Okay? Here's going to be a helpful thing, is that if I change my particle type under shading, and again, the one you're looking for is always hidden. There it is. I can change this to numeric, or numeric, however you want to pronounce it, and call this one speed of change. Okay. Now what this does is it shows you the number. So right now this is 5, meaning it's showing me the fifth, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I don't know why I counted, guy. Okay. Now that's a little bit of a lie, because this one is not actually 1, that one's actually 0, and this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is actually 5, that's actually that one. Okay, so it shows you what the number is. So as I hit play, you can see that these numbers just keep going up. So what I want this to do is basically go from 0 to 5 and then cycle back to 0. Okay, so I can do that. At least I think I can. We'll find out. All right, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say speed of change equals this. Perfect. But I'm going to do a little if statement at the beginning of this. If speed of change is equal, and whenever you do is equal, you do 2 equal signs. Okay. If I just did 1, that means set it to be equal. If I do a plus sign, then that's just wrong. So if the speed of change is equal to 5, actually let's do greater. Okay. If it's greater than 5, then speed of change equals 0. Okay, else that. Now here is where I'm not going to get this correct. Edit. Holy cow. I'm going to buy a lottery ticket tonight, folks. Alright, so now what's going to happen? We hit play, and you'll see that the numbers go from 1 through 6. Okay? Now it is going from 0 to 6, okay? So it starts off at 0 and then it goes 6. Now if I wanted to not go to 6, I could say greater than or equals to 5, because we actually don't have a 6. Okay, remember I said that this is 0, 2, come on, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So we don't actually have a 6. So now doing that, grab our particles, we'll see that none of these will ever equal 6. It just goes to 5 and then back to 0. Okay. Now again, because we're writing expressions, we could actually do other stuff into this too. So if the speed of change is greater than 5, then do this stuff, and if it's not, then do that stuff. Alright, so what I want to do is I want this whole thing to only evaluate every so many frames. Okay. So I can have like another if statement. Okay. Now how do I figure out if I'm on a certain frame? Well, let's say I did a frame just as a whatever frame divided by 5 equals 10. Okay, so what that means is that if I take the frame number, which is down here 80, and I divide it by 5, obviously that doesn't equal 10, that equals 4. So it would only evaluate on that frame. But what I can do is this thing called a modulus. Okay, so what a modulus does is it takes this and it divides it, so like frame divided by 5. And then if the remainder is equal to 10, then it would do that. Okay, now this is probably, you're probably swearing at me right now, but I don't care. So if basically frame divided by 5, okay, gives us a remainder of 10, then do this. Well, that doesn't make much sense, but if I make the remainder 0, okay, and again double equal to say is equal to, so if the frame divided by 5 has a remainder of 0, then do all this stuff. Now what does that mean? That means that on frame 5, when frame is divided by 5, it'll be 1, like it goes evenly into that, and then the remainder would be 0. So every 5 frames this thing would actually execute. I just have to do a curly bracket here and a curly bracket there. And I'm on fire tonight. Okay, you do a starty curly bracket and an end curly bracket to say I want all of this junk to happen if we're on the 5s. And just to make things nice and neat. Isn't that pretty? Alright. So let's throw this over to my other screen. Let's rewind. Let's hit play. Okay, so now we'll look at this and we'll see it says 4, 3. 4, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1, 1. Okay, so that's what it's doing is every 5 frames it's picking up a new instance. So we just wrote exactly what that whole thing was. So there you go. Add it to your resume. Just because that's probably the most perfect expression I've ever written, I'm going to save that. Okay. And I like to put it into my Maya folder and into scripts and particle sequencer. It's always good to save your expressions. Okay, so we don't actually need this. We already found that out because it's already there. If we just go to our instancer and we set this to cycle sequentially, and we set our cycle size to 3, and we rewind it and play, we get essentially the same animation. Okay, but we have very little control over this. We're kind of locked into whatever that specific number tells us to do. But you know what? It's okay. We'll get over it. Alright, so let me find my shading again so I can turn off these sprites, or these numerics. So I'll just put them back to points. There we go. And point size, I'll just shrink it down to 0, 1. Alright, so now we hit play and we get our fish nicely animated. Alright, cool. Now, what we might get in here is we might get some of these fish that are actually intersecting each other. We're not going to see it right now, but let's say I had, instead of 10 for my rate, I had 100. And just for the sake of demonstration, I shrunk my emitter to a super tiny size. Look at that. So, we have all of these fish. You can't tell me there's no intersecting there. There is. But what we can do is kind of figure out a way to not have that intersection. So let's just make that bigger again. There we go. I'm going to hit play again. Grab my little particle dudes, and under collisions, I'm going to say self-collide. And under solver display, I'm going to say self-collision thickness. Okay. So now what I may get is my actual thing, my item that I want to show off. But I'm under the renderer viewport. I need to change this back to legacy. And what that should do is if I zoomed in carefully and I go to wireframe, there's a tiny little sphere right here. And that tiny little sphere is the collision thickness. So I want to take that collision thickness and I want to scale it up. It needs the effect. If it doesn't have the sound effect, then it just doesn't work. So something like, you know, like that. Okay, so what this should do is that it should not collide. Those dots, those spheres, should not collide with each other. So as we hit play, you'll see that they're not colliding with each other. Now, what that also means is that, you know, they may kind of freak out at some point, but we just have to be aware of it. Okay, so turn this back off. They still self-collide. Perfect. I don't need this many fish. That's like overkill. That's like a huge sea of fish. Maybe 25 would be a good value. So we hit play, and there go the fishy. Okay. You want to have a good number of fish. You want to be able to kind of navigate around them also, right? So if I had 1,000, so this is how many fish we get when we have 1,000 fish per second. And this is only 4 seconds, so, you know, that's really hard to navigate, and especially render this out, holy cow. It's moving really slow. So, Alright, so set it back to 25. This is something you're going to play with. As you start to work with your stuff and you start to see your scene, you really get a better feel for it. Now, what we don't want to do is compress it too much. We want to give it a good sense of depth in the scene. Okay, so that's part one. So we've animated a school of fish. Let's save our scene and hit continue. Now, the next step of this is that we need to get this guy animated. Now you see we also have these other fish that are right here, so we have to be careful not to move those fish because that'll obviously affect certain things. So I'm going to grab these fish. I'm going to grab a new layer here, and I'm going to put them on it. And this is going to be called fish instancers. Fish instancers, and I'll just turn that off. Okay, just making sure my other fish are still there, which they are. Alright, so here's my FishAnim guy. Reset these to 0. Okay. Come on. Alright, so now if we grab the FishAnim one, just like we talked about before, now we can move this all around. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scoop back a touch, like so. I'm going to go to my front view, or side view. The front view had a horrible view. And I'm going to zoom way out. There we go. So I want to see my emitter. I want to see that guy. So I'm going to go and create a curve, a CV curve. And what I'm going to do is just go boop, 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 boop. Again, sound effects are definitely needed. Boop. Boop, 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 boop. There we go. And then go back to perspective view. All right. So this gave us a pretty straight path. Fish typically don't swim in a straight path. So I'm going to click on one of the points. I'm going to hit B, which is my soft select. I'm going to hold B and middle drag. Nice. And stretch this out. Okay. If you don't have B, you get this. And that's a little bit too abrupt for my little fish. So I hit B, make sure it's big enough change there. Because this fish is going to be swimming all over the place. You know, he's not that stay at home, watch a movie kind of fish. He's the I'm going to go see the world kind of fish. Kind of like Nemo. He's actually kind of a jerk. There we go. Alright, so that's cool. Make it bigger, make it smaller, whatever we want to do. This is the path our fish is going to take. There we go. Alright. So, now I need to get this fish to move along that path. So here's how we do that. I grab the fish. I control click the path. I go to the hotbox. I move my mouse around until I find the correct menu. Maybe it's under here. I keep moving stuff. Key. There it is. Key. Let's just go with the animation menu. There we go. I forgot they moved it to constrain. Stop moving stuff, Maya. So, constrain, motion paths. Attach to motion path option box. So, a couple big things. Time slider. Right now I have 1,000 frames. Kind of a bit too much. Let's do start and end. And how many frames do I actually want to render out? Like 10. But for the assignment, we want at least 120. But that's going to be moving kind of quick for this fish. So, I'm going to say 600. Okay, that way he moves kind of slow and I get to pick where I want his animation to happen at within those 600 frames. So I'm going to do 1 to 600. Should be a good length of time. And follow, of course I want the fish to follow it. Duh. And then the front of the fish. Okay, let me zoom in on my fish. That was the opposite of zooming in on my fish. And if you look at the blue arrow points towards his butt. Okay. And that's mine. My blue arrow points to my fish's butt. So, that means that the positive Z is towards his butt. The butt is not the front. So in this case, the negative Z is the front. So I'm going to say Z is going to be the front. And I'm going to say inverse front. That means make Z negative. Okay. And then Y, which is the green one, is up. And that's cool. And then we hit attach. Now again, if I did it correctly, we should be in for a treat. So there's my fish. I did it correctly. We hit play, and off he goes. Okay, you'll see that he's wagging his tail. Okay, as he's swimming along. The cat calls in this one. Alright. Now, obviously, he's getting ahead of the other fish, which is fine. We don't want this to look like an invasion of fish. These fish will eventually start on the screen. Right now, we're just kind of using it as a placeholder. Like, I can tell, hey, he's maybe a little bit too high. Maybe I want to grab this curve and pull it more down towards the middle. And then rewind it, and then hit play again. Okay. I also want to look at his speed compared to their speed. Okay. So he still might be going a bit quick. So I'm going to grab my FishAnim, go to the attribute editor, and go to the motion path. I get this U value. That's what's animating him. I right click, I go to the top button, and I can set my end time to, let's say, 800. Okay, my end time being longer means that he's going to be moving at a slower speed. Okay, now he's still moving faster than the other fish, but that's fine because he's a star of the show, and he can do whatever he wants. Okay, he gets green M&Ms only in his dressing room. Still moving too fast though. Not ready for this. There we go. 900. Don't you hate it when you're wrong? 1,000. There we go. Okay. So again, he's moving at a good speed. He's not moving too quick. He's not moving too slow. He is moving faster than them, which is fine because again, he is the star of the show. And I did end up using those full 1,000 frames. Whatever. All right. Now at the beginning, he is starting a bit slow. If I go to my graph editor, which is somewhere inside here, right to it, this animation curve is just like, you know, a regular curve where we have a slow in, slow out. I'm just going to make it linear. Perfect. So now he's going to move at one consistent speed. Okay. Now again, I'm not going to render out 1,000 frames. I'm going to pick my best 100 or so frames. Now I could also say, well, you know what? These back fish are actually moving a bit slow. Let's take their long axis to like 200. Again, this is mine. Figure out your own. I'm not doing your homework for you. So now they're moving pretty quick and he's moving kind of slow. So let's grab him again and go to his U value, click on that thing, set this down to a lower value. So back to 600. And that feels right. Feels. I have feelings about how this fish is swimming. And it feels right. Almost right. Let's set this to 550. That should be good. Okay. You want to get to different angles. You want to look at the fish from different angles. You want to see how he's moving. Okay. Does that feel right? All right. That feels right to me. Perfect. All right. So that's cool, and he's, you know, moving along, doing his thing. But I really don't. Let's see when he gets to this curve here. Okay, when he gets to this curve, you can see he pretty much stays straight. All right, so not really a whole lot of deformation happening to him. And right here too. He pretty much stays straight the entire time. It feels kind of rigid and phony, you know. So what I'm going to do is under my constrain motion path, there's a flow path object. I'm going to go to the option box. And what this is going to allow me to do is make an object. That's what I want to do, is an object flow path. And I'm going to set this to 5, 5, and 5. Give that a go. And I'm going to hit flow. And you'll see my fish went backwards. Okay. I'm going to hit play, and he is still backwards. What is he doing? I don't know what he's doing. Kids nowadays. Alright, so I get this lattice and I get this base. So what could have happened is one of these guys is just off. Okay, so if I grab this and I scale it like that, you'll see that the fish is now going the correct way. Okay, now I'm going to exaggerate this a bit. Yours may not have done that, just mine did. Okay, I'm going to turn off my B because I want this to be a bit drastic, just so we can see what this, why your instructor wants you to click extra buttons. Okay, so look at how sharp that is right there. So here comes the fish. Okay, here he comes. It's coming into the turn. We're going to go frame by frame here. Alright, so now let's look at the fish. Now he's actually turning into that. Okay, he's actually like bending into this movement here. That's what that lattice is going to do. Okay, so instead of us getting this rigid fish, we actually get this like little blendy little dude. Okay, now once we have this thing going the correct way, let me rewind this a bit. Go back to the beginning. It has to be bigger than him. Okay, if it's smaller than him, we get some weird results, like we were getting kind of like that, right? So I make it bigger than him. I'm going to scoot it in a touch this way. There we go. All right, so that's good. So now once that's there, I can just make a new layer, call this lattices, and then just turn it off. And he'll still do his thing. He'll still move along the path and still do whatever he needs to do. Now, in this instance, let's rewind that real quick, because he did something I want you to see. Here he is moving. Now watch when he hits this bump. He moved actually pretty quick over that bump. Okay. Now his movement is based on these points. Okay. If these points are too close together, if I were to grab a bunch of points and push them really close together like this, that affects where he's at on the path. So some instances he's going to go very slow, and some he's going to go very, very quick. So if that's happening in yours, where you see him kind of changing speeds, I'm going to make this bigger because I don't need that bump there anymore. We can grab the curve, go to curves, there it is, go to rebuild curve on the bottom, option box, and just say keep CVs and then rebuild. And what that's going to do is it's going to rebuild the curve. Now, you'll see that he goes along there and moves along perfectly. Okay, what that does, it just spaces out these points so they're a bit more even. That's all it does. It might reshape the curve a little bit, but that's cool. All right, there we go. So perfect, wonderful, delicious. Now for the final bit, these fish are kind of going perfectly straight, just whoop, straight out. I'm going to add a little bit of random in here. Because this is all the way up to 200 in my scene, I'm going to say, you know, 75, maybe 100. And now when I hit play, we're going to see them kind of moving at different speeds. That actually looks creepy. 50. Now you have to kind of ignore this side. I'm going to just scoot this over here. It still looks creepy. There you go. That looks better. It looks like they're just naturally kind of moving into that. Okay. Now we never want to show the emitter itself. We never want to show the fish just kind of coming out of nowhere. That's really weird. We also don't want them to start off with nothing and then kind of fill the screen. What we want to do is have plenty of fish on the screen. I go to the end. So he's at 550. So I'm going to play this until 550. There we go. Okay. So that's 550. So then what I can do is grab the fish, go to my FX, go to fields and solvers, go to initial state, and say set for selected. Down here. Nope, right there. Set for selected. So now when I rewind this, you'll see that it doesn't start with no fish. It starts with all these fish. And then when we hit play, you'll see that the fish are just naturally coming out of somewhere. All right. So now as we do this though, here's what's cool is that this direction we have a whole bunch of fish. So I can follow this fish And see, there's a whole school of fish kind of swimming around him too. And just to kind of emphasize him a touch more, I'm going to make him just a little bit bigger. Okay, and you'll see he's still deforming, he's still wagging his tail. All those things we could again grab this and control all of these. Tweak those settings if we needed to. We don't need to. In my case, your case, you might need to. All right, so this is awesome. All right, so I'm happy with the way all of this is looking. So what I want to do now is grab my fish. I'm going to go to end cache and create a new cache. Okay, so create new cache. End object, option box, leave that as is, 1 file per frame, evaluate every frame, save every evaluation, and then actually I just want to go to the start and end, okay, because 550 is how far our fish is going. So what this is going to do is it's going to write out all that fish data. So we basically will have a perfect animation every single time. It won't change based on the dynamics of it. So we just wait for that to go. Hey, it's done. Cool. So now what this means is that we can click and drag inside here, and you'll see that the fish are automatically updating. Okay, if we did that before, it would freak out. Maya would probably crash. So now we can save. That's great. All right. So now that's cool. Now we have everything we need. So now all we need to do is create some cameras and animate our or create a little scene inside here. That'll be in a different video. All right, cool. Oh, just a couple other things before I do that. Some things we can change too. We're going back to the instant stuff because now that I'm looking at this, I'm kind of seeing the fish just look kind of boring. I'm going to go down to my per particle stuff, my add dynamic attributes, and go to general and fish scale. Fish scales. Per particle, okay. I'm going to go to right click, creation expression, and I'm just going to, this isn't doing anything, it's just there. Fish scales is equal to a random number between 1 and 2. There we go. So what I can do with that is under my instancer, it's down here, under scale, I can set that to be my scale. Now it's not showing up, so I have to say allow all data types. Then go to here, then go down to fish scales. There it is. Okay. So now when we rewind this and hit play, you'll see that nothing actually happens. Okay. Now this data that we're looking at is stuff that's already been cached out, so this doesn't, it's not updating. Is basically what's happening. So I'm going to go to my cache and I'm going to say delete cache. So now my cache is gone. So I'll rewind it and hit play, and you'll see that all my new fish come out, and they're different sizes. So some are bigger, some are smaller. Okay, so we do get some variation there, but all the first ones are still dots. So I still have to go to the first ones here, go to my fields and solvers, initial state, and say clear initial state, rewind it, and now hit play, and then we'll see we definitely get, oops, come on, some that are bigger and some that are smaller. Again, adding to a little bit of the look of our scene. Okay? So you can see this guy is pretty little right there. Adorable. Probably a baby. Okay, so that's the last thing I wanted to show. So then what I can do is just let it play through until it gets to the end again. Doodly doodly doo. About there, good. And then I could grab this and then do my initial state, set for selected. Then I could rewind it with those still selected. I could create a new cache. It will say, are you crazy? You already have one. And I could just say replace it. And I'll just go back and replace the existing cache. Okay. Now I could also go in there and write other expressions that would actually control the speed of the fish. Maybe some fish are moving faster than others. That's obviously something we can do too. But again, here's the requirements is this. You know, you get a nice selection of fish in the scene. Alright, so that's where we're going to end the video. And the next one we'll have is rendering this out, creating some cool cameras, you know, the boring stuff.